Setbacks are temporary, but comebacks, they are legendary. Welcome back to the PSI Effect, where we pause, shift, and ignite purpose that speaks louder than your past. This is Nuge, and together with Frankie, we're your hosts in this space, and your comeback starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PSI Effect podcast. We welcome you, our seasoned listeners, and also our newcomers. We welcome you to go to your favorite social media spot and make sure that you like and subscribe and comment so that we boost the algorithms so that folks can find us. And hopefully we can entertain some new folks who are looking for something different and something new and how to get unstuck as we travel through this PSI journey. But before we get into everything on the podcast, we are going to be talking today about rats. I'm not sure what that means. At least I know what it means. I'm not going to tell you. Anyway.
Nuge with the teaser.
And
I don't know how I feel about you looking at me when you said rat.
It
was it aggressive?
A little bit. Yeah.
Maybe because, we're holding the mics like this and maybe we're going to break out. But in either case, I am here today with Frankie and we have our special guest, Kyle. But before we jump into everything, Frankie, tell us what's going on.
Well, it's great to be co-located in the space. Have my man Kyle back in the space again. And if you tuned in before, you remember Kyle from our Embracing Discomfort episode. And he's been gracious enough to come back and join us again on the podcast. So welcome back. My brother from another mother. Just real quick before we get started, just give the folks a rundown a little bit about you, just in case they missed you the first time.
Yeah, so Kyle Zachary. Excited to be here again. Excited about what you guys are doing. I'm happy to be a very teeny tiny part of, the journey. Frankie and I go back, I think last time you said it was 15, we're like 15, 16 years.
Yeah, we're about to hit 16, sweet 16.
It's hard to believe, but pretty much just, I feel like I'm an average dude living through, middle-age crisis, trying to be a good husband, really good father to 2 daughters and, a good, employee and just trying to crush every aspect of life, which comes with a lot of challenges. But
Man, yeah.
But like I said, glad to be back. Glad to be in the same spot. This is, much different than being virtual last time. So I like this.
We thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. And I'm excited about the conversation that we're going to have today. And it's always good to have interesting conversations. And let's jump in. Let's see what the rats have to say about today.
So one of the things I wanted to bring up, in the previous episode, we had talked about, it was right before I had a race, the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Trail Race, the WTF Trail Race. And we were talking about it because the weather was turning really cold, right? It was going to be like in the 30s, maybe even the high 20s. There's a river crossing in this race. There's going to be water and, Nuge, you looking at me like, man, what the hell is wrong with you doing stuff like that? So Kyle, I'm going to bring this up because, I've actually got a race coming up next week or in a little while. I have, in 2 weeks, I have another race coming up, another trail race. And prior to this last race, it went well. I finished, didn't break anything, didn't fall, which is a win for me because if my big butt falls in the woods, it makes a lot of noise. So made it through, but it was the pre-race stuff that really wigged me out. And, Kyle, you and I have talked about it before as we've done kind of competitions and races in the past. I have a recurring dream that comes up before races. And that recurring dream is that I am either late to the start or I get lost on the course during the race and I never finish and I never get the medal. And I think that speaks to 2 things. I've mentioned it before, I love getting race medals. I was like, all right, what kind of medal is it? It's a cool medal. Yeah, I'll do the race. Sure, no problem. Does it spin? Oh, yeah, I'm down. I'll do the extra mileage to get the spinny medal. But in this dream, it was almost like a nightmare because I'll put in all this work. I'm running, I'm doing my best, but I'm lost and I never crossed the finish line. Ring any bells for you, Kyle?
Oh yeah, many times. I mean, I don't think I've ever had like a recurring nightmare like that, but no matter what the race is, okay, to the longest distance races I've done, the day before is just, it's like, the level of nervousness, anticipation that it's hard to describe, but I basically just can't sit still. Like I keep moving.
Get that leg going.
I can't focus on anything. It's like, I'm, you know, I'm not out there breaking any records, but it's like I'm about to go, I'm going out there ready to crush it the best I can. And the nervousness leading up to that is something that I have every time.
And the most distressing part for me is that, and of this recurring dream, is that I'm putting in all this work. I feel like, all right, I'm it's, how sometimes in your dreams, like, all right, I'm running my fastest, but you feel like you're in slow motion, putting in all this effort and I'm never crossing the finish line. And I think that's a good sort of springboard into our conversation today of, Nuge, you leaked that we were going to talk about rats, but, we're not calling Kyle a rat. I'm not a rat, but, you do have the Master Splinter kind of thing going on with the beard.
What can I say? So, thank you for reframing the whole conversation about rats for our audience, because we are indeed talking about the rat race. And I think that there's many of us who can relate to the rat race and what that really means. And so we're going to get into it and talk about, like, what does it mean? What does the rat race mean?
What do you think, Kyle? Like when we talk about the rat race, what's your take on it, and what does that mean to you?
So, I mean, you describing your nightmare and me knowing the topic. I liked how you were kind of like segueing into that, because the rat race for me is it's this endless race that you're running towards more of something, more money, more recognition, more visibility, just more of something, more. Um, with a very hurried pace. So it's not just the fact that you're endlessly going after something, but it's like you gotta get there. But there really is like your dream being lost, not seeing the finish line. There really is no finish line.
Yeah, it's it reminds me of the old Bugs Bunny cartoons back in the day where, you might see a cartoon character riding on the back of something that's got a little stick out front with a carrot or something hanging on the end. So it's like, oh yeah, and whatever thing they're riding is just giving its best, trying to chase after, the carrot on the end of that stick, but it's never going to get there. What's your take, Nuge?
Well, I think that's exactly right. That, you have something that you're chasing after, an achievement, a goal or something like that. And you just keep chasing after it and you never reach it. You never achieve it. And I guess in a sense that is like a bad dream. Once you wake up and realize that you have been, chasing this thing and you're not making any ground, you're not making any headway. And I can see that being very frustrating. And it's pretty amazing how we've come to this point where the rat race connotates what we're talking about here is not achieving something or not being able to reach a goal and chasing things over time and not being able to get there. And, I was doing just a little bit of research before we started this podcast. Rat race actually started back in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, where there were actually rat hunts. It would actually hunt rats like you hunt duck or you hunt deer or what have you. And to think that, over the years, it has come to this point where the rat race is, it means something totally different than that.
Interesting. I wonder if that has any ties to like stuff. Maybe I'm reaching here, but like the bubonic plague, you got these rat infestations. Rats are these creatures that carry all sorts of terrible diseases, but there's so many, even though you're hunting them, it's not like you're even ever making a dent in their actual population. Maybe that was the hook for the negative connotation that we see on it today.
That's very interesting. And it does, when you frame it that way, it does seem to match up with what we're talking about today in terms of the rat race.
And how much, you said the 1800s.
Yes.
Yeah, and like everything, how much does it, it starts there. How much does it exponentially increase into other things? Like everything else grows and develops through our time.
Absolutely. That's a good point too.
Yeah. So, we've made some allusions to what we see the rat race as. And it feels like this endless cycle, and there are steps in that cycle. And I think those steps could be different for everybody. But it really feels like it can manifest in a lot of different areas of our lives. Is it limited to just like our career spaces, or are there other ways that the rat race, we can feel like we're stuck in the rat race?
I think it probably applies to a lot of different facets of life, just like everything does. I mean, doesn't necessarily have to be career and titles. I mean, it also comes down to like, social media is very prevalent now. You're constantly seeing other people, presenting a lifestyle, and then, then you want, well, that person has this car. I know I really want that car, or this person. You see you're constantly inundated now with, images that perhaps aren't even reality,
Mhm.
and they give you that kind of like, again, you got to get back on the hamster wheel to try to pursue whatever that next glamorous thing is that you see.
Yeah, I think that idea of competing with other people is part of what the rat race is all about. We talked about the workspace, but when you're chasing after, maybe you're chasing after promotion, and you're working in a space where three or four other people are chasing after that same promotion. And if you're in an environment where the target moves, where you have your sight set on what the target is to reach that promotion, but if the target moves, whether it's the business changes or what have you, but the target moves,
Mhm.
and so then now you're chasing further because you still want that promotion. So it it can be it can be a challenge when you're having that comparison, or you having that competition to get to a certain point.
I like what you brought up there about the notion of a moving target, because to me that kind of embodies that carrot on the end of the stick. Because while you're making progress forward, that carrot is also moving forward at the same rate. So, is it safe to say that a moving target is always going to be kind of involved in this feeling of the rat race if we don't have a solid finish line and staying put?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, that's, it's called the rat race, but it is kind of like the hamster wheel. You're like, it's always more, 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 or this new thing or the next new thing. It's kind of different than like a normal goal where it's, I want to do X to get to this place. It is constantly moving and evolving. I want this raise. That's good for a couple months. I really want the next raise and the next thing. Just com- continues compounding on it.
Yeah, I think you get to a point where you have to start to manage your feelings, your emotions, right? Because if that target continues to move and you don't hit that target, I can only imagine how much frustration one could feel behind that, right? And then you bring stress into your life and some other things. So how do we manage that piece of it? I mean, as we look at the PSI framework, and understanding that what the rat race means, chasing after something that seems to always elude us. Um, how do we how do we manage that piece?
Yeah, can.
Go for it.
All right. So, pause is the first stage, right?
Mhm.
I don't know that a lot of people know it takes pausing and introspection to know you're even in the, you're even getting suckered into the rat race. I don't know that most people know that they're even in the race. You actually have to pause and think about, take the promotion example, right? Um, why you want the promotion? It's usually just bring more stress and more responsibility. Is there what it,
Yeah, but I get those dollars.
yeah,
I
but
get those dollars now.
what are you gonna do with those?
I mean, I could do a lot of things with them. I mean, I could pay the bills.
Yeah, pay the bills.
Yeah, I could pay the bills.
But then what are you gonna do when you're working 60, 80 hour weeks in that new, that new role? You're not gonna have any downtime to spend it.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what you said, that people don't really think about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, more money's nice, right?
yeah,
No money, no problem.
yeah.
I think that was our first bar in the rap session that you alluded to at the top of the podcast. Well played. Well played. Well played. So the analogy of the hamster wheel that you made. So in a case like that, how would you frame the scenario that News just talked about with the promotion? How would you frame that as kind of places on the hamster wheel? You start one way, you go forward a little bit, and it brings you back to the beginning. How would you describe I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it, the stages around the hamster wheel? Like, oh yes, I want to get this promotion. So I got the promotion. What comes next on the wheel?
Clarity about why. Or you say you got the promotion?
Yeah, let's just say I'm in the race and I don't know it yet. I got this promotion. What's the next step on the wheel? I feel like I've taken a step forward, but the wheel's just spinning. So what comes to me next?
It's a great question. I mean, you've got to figure out how to get off the wheel, right? So like if you're on the wheel, you got the promotion, the next step is kind of blindly, well, what's the next step in this journey? All right, I'm now a supervisor. All right, well, I really want to, that's good. I gotta be a manager, and then I gotta be a director. And then, those are great. You get more money from it, but you gotta kind of like cue it into, is this really feeding, my real purpose in life? What is this providing me other than money? Because again, money's only going to give you so much, and you can't take it with you when you're gone. So
it sounds like what you're saying, Kyle, is that there are forces that draw you back into the rat race. So if you get the carrot, right? In this case, we're talking about promotion. You get the carrot, and now you want more.
It's like, oh, you got that carrot. Here's the gourmet carrot.
Right.
Oh, you got that saltine. Oh, here's the Ritz. It's like Ritz.
Yeah, exactly. So like it keeps drawing us in. So I guess the question is, how do we get out? At what point? I mean, how do we get out? And my first thought is, like you were saying too, Kyle, is the introspection, right? And you mentioned the why. And so why do you want that carrot, right? And if you're intentional about your journey and why you want that carrot, in my mind, it seems like it will be easier to get out of the rat race if you are intentional about the direction that you're going in, and once you achieve that level, then you could step out.
yeah, and then I think it also comes with slowing down. I think the carrot really pulls you in because there's like a sense of urgency behind it, where you're not taking the time to make those deliberate thoughts. You're more acting without thought, really, and that's when the carrot can get you, is when you're not actively slowing down and considering things.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the power of the pause is slowing things down to be able to take that time to think. One of the questions I think we don't explore, is, we talk about the why, but if we get the carrot, I don't think we ask, I know when I've been in the race, I didn't ask, okay, I got the carrot. What comes next? Like, all right, now that I've got this, now what? And having a good plan for trying to understand how I'm going to, now that I've got to this level, achieve this thing, got this thing, what do I do next to continue to stay consistent? Like you mentioned, like stay consistent with my personal values, my sense of self, the things that drive me forward. Not answering that question of what comes next allows us to stay firmly entrenched on that wheel and not being able to get out of the rat race.
Do you think that if you have that intentionality, if you have that focus about your why and your direction and achieving a goal, do you think that there's a need to actually be in the rat race? I mean, can you still achieve that goal outside of the rat race because you're confident in yourself, you're confident in what your goals are, you're confident in what your abilities are, that you don't have to necessarily compete, like competition in competition terms, I guess, to get that promotion, I guess, and part of what I'm trying to say is, if you're focused on the work, if you're focused on the goal, will it ultimately take care of itself? Will it just come to you by itself versus you trying to chase after it?
I don't have a good example on my mind, but there are examples of situations and people that where, success has come to them, when they're least trying, right? Maybe we can take a race example. The races where felt like I was trying the hardest haven't yielded the best times or best experiences for me. Like I would much rather run a slower half marathon with you.
Oh, yeah. See, you see how he's throwing hot darts over here trying to say I'm a slow old man. But it's okay.
Well, I'd rather have a nice leisurely half.
Leisurely. Oh, man, we're getting even better.
We got to be able to talk. You got a slower pace so we can actually have it.
I can hear you right now.
Yeah, that's a great example.
What?
But I forget where I was going with it. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's plenty of examples in life where when you're trying the least, you're removing that layer of stress from you. Like you're not applying that extra external pressure to yourself. You can be more loose, and that usually yields better results in the long run.
I got it. It almost sound like you're describing or asking the question of, can we win the game by not playing the game? Right?
Yeah. I mean, if we don't fall into the trap of the rat race, can we still win? Can we still achieve what we want to achieve? There's a part of me that says yes, because it makes me think of, one of the first promotions that I ever got in my job was, I had a manager come to me and said, we have this job over here open. And I said, no, I don't think I'm ready, And he said, yeah, I think you're ready. I said, no, I don't think I am. And, that went back and forth, for a time. And ultimately I did apply for it and I got the job and I did really well at it. But, was I necessarily chasing that? It's something that I thought about that would be nice to do, or something that, I wanted to grow into, but I didn't think I was ready for it. So, can you win without participating in that level of, what we're describing the rat race is?
My hypothesis with that is that it depends. And it depends on the level of control that we as individuals have over the goal or the finish line. If the finish line is one where somebody's not going to come in and move it or move the goalpost or, whatever analogy we want to use, then I think, yes, we can set a path. That path may twist and turn along the way, but we can still get there without necessarily having to engage in the race. But if we're in an environment where somebody else is controlling what the definition of done and what the definition of success looks like, I think we would be very hard pressed to be able to get there without having to engage at some level in what we're calling the rat race.
Yeah, and it's hard to what does win? No one wins the rat race, and if you do, you're still a rat, right? So
Yes.
I think it comes down to what win means too. And I think the rat race, well, for me, it's like I want that thing. You have an image of what you want. It could be in your professional world. I want the corner office with, the power. I want the power of this position, and you see that. But it's just a picture. You have no idea of all the stuff behind the scenes, the stresses, the pressure, the long hours, the family that probably hates you because you're constantly at work and that's your number one focus. I think if you win, winning or overcoming the rat race to me is changing the lens you're looking at it from. Are you happy? Are you fulfilled in what you're doing? Are you, you know, are you leading your family and providing for your family? Those are, for me, stepping away from the chasing of some Instagram worthy, state isn't really winning. It's getting out of that and switching up how you're looking at it.
Now, we spent a lot of time kind of talking about the rat race. But one of the things that I don't think we really dug into is how being stuck in the rat race. Because, sometimes we may feel like we're stuck. And, Kyle, you mentioned like during the pause, being able to take time to even recognize that we're in it. Um, and sometimes the way that we'll recognize we're in it is by the effects that it's having. What are some of the ways that you've experienced the rat race having, negative impacts on you? What are some of those impacts that you've felt in your journey?
I mean, it's definitely come down to anxiety, the feeling of stress from work, or, you know, I'm a high achiever. I'm always striving for that next level of something. The racing world, escalated pretty quickly through the ranks of
Right.
of different distances and challenges. The same at work. So I think, you know, not enjoying what I'm doing at work or in life, and not being, I'll say again, not feeling happy, but more anxious. And there's always that sense of, not feeling like you're enough kind of deal. Those are the things that really manifest itself as, what was the original question? Sorry.
Just the negative impacts of
Yeah.
being stuck in.
Yeah. So those are the things that for me really spike up for, the negative aspects is, anxiety, stress, unhappiness.
What about you, Nick?
Well, I was just thinking about, the the comments that you both made, and it just leads me back to, um, the why, because you were talking about family and being happy. And if you know what your why is, then I think it's easier to step off and get out of the rat race, because maybe you've achieved something at your job, but if your why is your home life, is your family life, and you get to a point where that is, stable and comfortable, and everybody's happy, then I think it's easier for you to step off of that or out of that rat race. Um, but I also agree with what you were saying about, being in the rat race, and in that chase. Stress and anxiety are huge. Man. They're huge. And it's not always easy to manage that stuff. Because stress can sneak up on you. You may not think it's stress, but it's definitely stress. And so you can create some other problems for yourself because you don't even recognize that those things are really affecting you the way that they are. So I think that those are probably the top two that I would throw into the mix.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was very much physical manifestations. I ended up in the hospital because I'm feeling lightheaded and dizzy, and find out my blood pressure is through the roof. Because of stress, feeling like I'm stuck in the rat race. Blood pressure through the roof, not sleeping well, not able to be present in the moment, spending time outside of work because work is always on the periphery of my mind, and replaying a conversation from work 20 million times in my head, like, damn it, I should have said this instead of that when they said this. It's those types of things have been the most detrimental for me, being stuck in a rat race.
Yeah, and so we talked about pausing and recognizing that you're in the rat race, and we talked about just some movement while you're there, and achieving the outcome that you want. And so I guess what I'm asking now is, how do you make the shift out of how do you make that shift out of the rat race, right? What actions do you take to get out of that rat race? And
So I think part of it, I mentioned this a second ago, but changing your perspective on how you're looking at things, look at it from a different lens. So, for example, I don't remember all the details. We were on a phone call a couple months ago talking about work and things.
Mm.
And it was, if I went back, 15 years ago in my career, I was chasing that next title. I want to be a senior, then I want to be this, then that, and another. And that was it. And then we were talking, a few weeks ago, and I was describing where I'm at now, enjoying what I'm doing. um, I don't have any direct reports, which that's something, previous me would have really wanted, was title with some supervision and direct reports. But again, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and my work is incredibly close to my house. And you said, well, it sounds like you're winning. And I was like, huh. It really does. And so for me, that was like an aha moment during, of, yeah, I don't have to be in this race. I really am winning this game
Mhm.
through these other aspects that aren't really attributed to the quote unquote usual definition of the rat race.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mindset shift. Uh, in terms of what we can do. We've got way two real levers that we can pull. We can change how we're get out of the rat race by changing how we're dealing with our resources, or we can change it by dealing with the mindset side of things. And just like you said, making sure that our definition of success is compatible with our why. That's a huge benefit in being able to step off of that spinning wheel and just, being running in place there, all this energy and not taking you nowhere. Making sure that your definition of success is consistent with your identity and what you really value.
Yeah. And I think it also goes down to maybe not necessarily becoming a minimalist, but minimizing some things, right? Like
Mhm.
the rat race is like an all consuming, self fulfilling thing, right? So you want the nicer car, the car's more expensive, it comes with more debt. You need more money, you need a higher paying job, you know, hire more. Everything feeds. The rat race is kind of like always enticing you and feeding itself. So you kind of have to start minimizing those things. Do you really need to make this purchase? Is this really gonna give me anything other than the enjoyment of buying it? And then after that, I'm just stuck with the credit card debt from it.
So it sounds like what we're saying is that um, you can't control the race, but you can manage how you participate in the race.
Yeah. So going back to like the road racing, running analogy, you can easily get suckered into running someone else's race. It's easy to start out following someone and getting suckered into following their pace. You might be running a marathon and they might be running a 5K, and then you're going to be screwed because you got 23 more miles than that person does. What good is the race and following someone through the race if where you want to go is not where they're headed?
Yeah, I mean, and that makes total sense. So then, you just have to make sure that you're managing. You have to manage yourself through the race, right? You have to, again, knowing your why, having your, very specific goal, being intentional about, how you are going to um, navigate
Mhm.
through this process, and being willing to step off. I mean, if things are not going in the direction that you want them to go, in the fashion that you set up for them to go, you may need to step off. Maybe you make an adjustment in how you're managing yourself through the race, if that's the case. But you have to be willing to step off if it's not beneficial for you, if it's not healthy for you. You have to be willing to step off, and knowing that. Um, so that's what it sounds like. I hear us saying here.
And Kyle, you referenced this at the top of the conversation. You're talking about social media and how it's easy for us to get caught up in the comparisons. Um, I think part of the equation too of what keeps us stuck in the rat race is the fact that it's very easy for us to try to constantly compare ourselves to other people or what we perceive other people to have. And the thing is, in that comparison, we don't know the whole story. Right? We don't know, they might be crying on the toilet every morning when they wake up from the anxiety of having to face another day. But what we see is like the 30-second post that they have on LinkedIn or social media, whatever the case, and we're comparing ourselves. So I think another way that we step off the wheel is we kind of reset what the standard is that we're trying to judge ourselves by. And the more we can internalize or create an internally referencing definition of what the standard should be, I think the less likely it is that we fall into the trap of the rat race.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to have a strong internal code. You have to have that standard for yourself that connects with your why, like we talked a lot about. That is like you're gonna you're gonna be disciplined to sticking to. You know, you're not going to get suckered into, like you said, that filtered view of some life that you have no idea what's behind it other than that image. And I don't do any social media, so I'm just not going to help you with followers at all. But I mean, that is a way that I feel like I keep myself, to my standard is I don't partake in any of that. You know, I know what makes me happy and what I want to achieve, and I'm not looking to, judge that against others. The other thing that came to mind is, how much does scarcity, feed into the rat race and the feeling that there's only limited things. And like, if others have them and I need to have them because if someone else has them and I can't get them, how much does scarcity versus abundance come to mind with
That's a good point.
getting into the rat race?
How do you think the ability to say no factors in to getting out of the rat race?
Yeah, you big guy.
Well, I mean, it's the strength. The first time you gain the strength to say no to something is incredibly difficult, right? Like saying no to a promotion, or no, I'm gonna not purchase that thing. It's difficult, but then it's like you build up a little cred after you've done it the first couple of times. Like anything, the more reps you put in, the the stronger you are. I was incredibly uncomfortable the first time I was on here. Marginally less uncomfortable now, but
Oh, wait till we finish editing that episode, man. It's gonna be real uncomfortable.
But yeah, I mean, knowing that you have the ability to say no and stop chasing the carrot, and again, failing at it, getting suckered back in, recognizing it, and the PSI cycle is not a one-time deal. It's a repeating thing you have to keep undergoing. So yes, okay, I pause, I recognize the failure. I'm going to build that muscle up and continue. The stronger you'll get and the more you'll be able to get out of the rat race.
Build those habits. A lot of the things you just talked about tied very much into some conversations we've had earlier in the space related to, building habits, that need for repetition. We're going to fall short, but, just every time that we're able to successfully complete that thing, it's one more vote in the bucket of, who we're trying to be with our identity.
Yeah, because then you eventually get to the point where you're naturally doing it.
Right.
You're stopping these things from enticing you and getting, it's autopilot at that point. You've set the habit loop in place. You carved those pathways.
So one of the things I'm curious about, we've talked about, the rat race. We've talked about some ways that we can potentially try to start disengaging from the rat race. What is, one of the terms I hear a lot, people will say, I'm on the grind. I'm grinding. They even made a song about it. That's another opportunity for some hot bars if you want to drop some bars right now. But, people say, I'm grinding. What's the difference, if there is one? What is the difference between grinding and being in the rat race?
It sounds like they're the same to me. I mean, grinding doesn't sound fun. It sounds like, I'm busy. I'm trudging through this. I'm not thriving. I'm not, fulfilled, enjoying what I'm doing. That's, you pass someone in the hallway at work. How you doing? Oh, I'm just so busy. So busy. It's like the natural answer. I'll do it sometimes. It's kind of the point where I didn't say that. It's just like the natural response at work is I'm busy. It's like this awarded thing to be busy. But yeah, I don't want to be grinding.
It does sound like it has a bit of a negative connotation.
Unless it's in the clip song, just to be clear.
I mean, their type of grinding could get you in jail. So let's not go there. What do you say, Nuge?
Grinding can mean a couple of things, I think. Yes, you can look at it and say, yes, it's very similar or even to some degree equal to being in a rat race. But grinding also, I think, is just a consistent trajectory forward toward the goal that you want to achieve. Because, I think of entrepreneurs, right? They're grinding, or they'll tell you they're grinding, but they're working in their own business, they're working for themselves, and there's competition, but it's outside of you know, the inner workings or the inner walls, I guess, of their specific space. And so they're just pushing really hard, I think, to make their business successful. Is that really the rat race? I don't know that I would classify it that way. I think it's just really an internal drive to make this enterprise that you're building to be as successful as you can. And I don't know that I would call that a rat race.
It's interesting to me. I have a view on grinding. So I think about grinding as I'm sharpening myself. I'm embracing some discomfort to sharpen myself for a better result later.
Mhm.
However, if we take it too far, then I think that puts us directly in the same waters as the rat race. Because if you grind too much, you grind away too much material, it becomes flimsy, doesn't have enough stability, and you can grind the whole thing away and there's nothing left of you. So I think there has to be a balance to when we're on the grind, am I sharpening myself but making sure we're not getting stuck in that mode to the point where we just grind ourselves away to nothing.
And I like that too. And what came to mind for me as you were talking about that, Frankie, is, in this space, we talk about accountability partners, our journey in the rat race or getting out of the rat race or, managing some of that. How do you think that might work? Because we've talked about how accountability partners can be helpful in a lot of different situations as we're on this PSI journey.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a special treat today because one of my main accountability partners is the guest today. So I want to pass the baton to Kyle. So Kyle, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I don't know how you can do this without an accountability partner. I mean, you can be the most introspective, looking in the mirror person possible, but you're still going to have blind spots. And I think that's where all I can say is every Thursday, there's a conversation between me and Frankie where I'm consistently reminded of, you know, where I'm falling short or, not really owning up to something I need to own up to. But you can edit this out later because what I'm trying to say is, stop being a bitch and move on. If I can pull that out later.
And you're not in social spaces either? Oh, yeah, we got to put that.
Okay. But yeah, that's really what it comes down to is there's those moments where having an accountability partner is, you got to get one.
Yeah, I'd echo that 100% because we all have blind spots. None of us have a full view of everything. We've created blind spots out of a quest for comfort or just because we think that we can forcefully mold our identity and things into something that it's not, and we just leave holes in ourselves. And eventually those holes compromise the structural integrity of who we are. And if we don't fill in those holes, if we're not aware of those holes, we're going to collapse. And an accountability partner is pivotal in being able to identify those things and not fall victim to that collapse.
Yeah, I think that's good stuff. And, you know, being in our audience, if you don't have accountability partners, consider it. I'm not going to tell you that you absolutely have to have one, but it's a very strong recommendation. So give it some consideration.
Yeah. So as we get ready to wrap things up, Kyle, one of the things I want to kind of give you an imagination task here. Let's say you've escaped the rat race. What's that look like for you?
For me personally,
Yeah, for you personally.
Being a good husband and a good dad's number one to me. Taking care of myself's number two. You know, being good at work is maybe three or four. I put 100% in, but it's not definitely the number one. Being in, you know, being fulfilled and happy every day is to me what it looks like.
What about you, dude? You're out of the rat race. What does it look and feel like for you?
It looks like Nuge living his life on his own terms, right? Time freedom, financial freedom, just free, and having an inner peace about life, and being enjoying the moments and being grateful for the time. But the biggest thing is just living life on my own terms and being free of every and any constraint that life has.
Yeah, freedom is a big piece of the puzzle. In my view, on top of all the things that you guys have already mentioned, it's um, I would if I'm out of the rat race, fully escaped from the rat race, the work that I do doesn't define who I am. It allows me to express who I am. And then if I can do that, I feel like I'm out of the race.
Awesome.
Did you got a challenge for our audience today?
I would say to our audience to, take that pause and have some introspection and take a look at where you are in your life right now and look at the things that you're chasing after and give some concrete thought as to whether or not you feel like you are in the rat race. And then from that point, I would say to if you haven't formulated a why of why you're doing these things, to revisit your why and see if you're on track, and make note of that, and have the courage to step out of the rat race if it's not meeting your needs, if it's not healthy for you right now. Because this journey is about loving yourself enough to do what's right for you, right? You do a lot for other people. What are you doing for you? So just take some of that time, take some introspective time and determine, if you're in that rat race and if it's worth it to you at this time, at this moment.
Before we wrap things up, Kyle, once again, thank you for taking the time out to join us. Great to be co-located so we can cut up in person for this conversation. But you have any parting words you want to, some golden nuggets to drop before we leave?
You said you're going to rap. Don't lie to the people.
I never actually said that.
Or summon your twin brother, Adam Levine, and sing a few bars.
I wasn't blessed with those traits either. But I think the one-liner, if you will, was that, even if you quote unquote feel like you win the rat race, you're really still a rat. So what are you chasing after?
Facts.
Awesome. Well said. Well, we've come to the end of this episode. And as always, before we leave, Frankie, let everybody know where to find us.
I got you. So anything PSI Effect related, go to our website. This is psipod.com. There you'll find a link to all of our episodes as well as all the platforms where you can get the audio version of our podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, just about all of those major podcast platforms. You can find the PSI Effect podcast. Go out there and subscribe so you don't miss anything. If you want to see the video version of this so you can see all these shenanigans live and in person, we are on YouTube. You can search for the PSI Effect podcast or use our handle at This Is PSI Pod, and find us on social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram at This Is PSI Pod. We look forward to seeing you in the digital spaces and fielding all those comments.
Thank you, Frankie. And thank you, Kyle, for showing up again. We really appreciate it. And if we do this again, you're going to have to do that rap thing.
I'll work on it.
All right, folks, listen, we have enjoyed having you with us today. We look forward to seeing you in our next episode. And until then, just remember that setbacks are temporary and comebacks are legendary. And until next time, go out there and be brave and rise on purpose.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the PSI Effect podcast. This show doesn't happen without you, and you can connect with us via Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit our website at thisispsipod.com and find us on YouTube and social media at This Is PSI Pod. That's at This Is PSI Pod. Until next time, remember, be brave and rise on purpose.